And my agency turned around to me and they say, we've got to do something about your thighs, after taking photos of me.
Wow. That really affects you.
Do you know what? It was so crazy. I can't explain why, but it was like a switch went off in my head. And I went home that evening and it was about 6 months before I ate a meal with my family again.
I'm Susan Yara and welcome to My Life Online. We're gonna have a lot of fun and learn a lot together. Whenever we talk about skincare, we're mostly talking about the products we put on our skin, but we rarely talk about what's happening inside our bodies. That's why I'm excited for today's guest, Emily English. She's a nutritionist, a gut health expert, and she also has her own Synbiotics supplement brand, which I'm sure she will talk about. In this episode, we talk about IBS and how our gut health really affects our skin and what we should be eating to have glowing skin. I am so excited to have you here today because already, just like talking to the ladies here in the studio, we've been talking about all the things we want to ask you. But before we even get started, tell us a little bit about your background.
So I didn't have a conventional route into nutrition, but I've always been into science and the human body. I was one of those kids that whenever it was Christmas, I would ask for like the little science kits where you do like the experiments or like you build your own little model. But I've always loved food and I come from a proper foodie family, so you'd say. So my granny actually has her own restaurant and my first job was in her restaurant kitchen. I used to prep all of her starters, prep all of like the veggies and stuff. So I've always had a strong connection to food, but food with a sense of a kind of emotional purpose, but good emotional purpose. Every single Christmas, birthday, we hosted over my family house and I'm one of 5 as well. So I come from a really big family. So dinner times, breakfast times, we always sat around the dining table. I think being from the generation that I was in, if you ever spoke about nutrition or spoke about nutritionists, it was always very heavily embroiled in diet culture.
Yeah.
So you thought about health and you thought about nutrition and you thought about kind of magazine headlines, weight loss, how to lose 6 pounds in 14 days kind of thing. And being really honest, as someone who was quite academic at school, I didn't really look at nutrition and see it as a proper degree. I wanted to maybe go and do human physiology, biomedical sciences, something like I knew that I wanted to kind of have a deeper understanding. And then when I was 16, I was at a music festival and I got a tap on my shoulder and someone said, "Would you like to come to a modeling casting?" And being that age, and I was thrilled, thinking, wow, they've chosen me. And I went, and I had this test shoot and it went really well. And then suddenly I was thrown into this world of the fashion industry. And I had a wonderful time with my first job role because I was actually an in-house model for an e-commerce company. And we don't have the same high pressure as the ultra kind of fashion models. I wasn't doing any sort of runway. Not that kind of level of intensity. It was from the age of 17 to 18, I'd say I was a bit of a late bloomer. Like I've always been a bit twiggy and not very kind of curvy. And I started to just fill out a little bit more as I became a woman. And I remember one day after having like the most amazing summer traveling, I went to America. I remember having this list of all of these restaurants I wanted to try, food I wanted to try, and I ate all of it. And did I probably put on a little bit of weight? Yeah, but nothing that was ever like unhealthy. Like it's normal, like we fluctuate. It's just part of life. And my agency turned around to me and they say, we've got to do something about your thighs, after taking photos of me.
Wow. That really affects you.
Do you know what? It was so crazy. I can't explain why, but it was like a switch went off in my head. And I went home that evening and it was about 6 months before I ate a meal with my family again. I lost my whole self. I lost my whole self-identity. I lost my whole relationship with food. And it just got to this breaking point one day that I realized this isn't what I wanted in my life or for my life. And I ended up leaving the fashion industry. I'd already been kind of 2 years late going to university. And I was like, okay, it's time to go to university. And do you know what I want to study? I want to study nutrition. And I went. I've healed my relationship with food. I discovered a love for an area of our health and well-being that we do every single day. Mm-hmm. Yet I don't think is respected enough, or it's starting to be respected enough, not just for weight loss and diet culture purposes, but to really allow you to be the best version of yourself. And the progression of me kind of through my career and now where I am with my kind of social media profile is nothing that I thought would happen in this way, but I'm so pleased it did because I now have all of this experience with the darker side of nutrition, all of this understanding of the science, and also all of this love for food. And I think so many people resonate with what I do just because it's normal and accessible, and the rest is history, really.
Yeah. You know what? Just in the few minutes of talking to you before we started recording, I got the sense that you find a lot of joy when it comes to food. And so you've really found this way to incorporate really healthy food that you enjoy making and that actually tastes good to people. And I think that's what's resonating with everybody, right?
Massively. Like my whole ethos is the food you want to eat, designed by a nutritionist. And I think we have this misconception when it comes to nutrition that if it's good for me, I'm not going to like it as much.
I absolutely think this.
Yeah.
I absolutely think this. I'm going to hate the diet food.
Yeah, 100%. And it's kind of like my mission in life to normalize nutrition. When we speak about nutrition, whenever I say I'm a nutritionist, people automatically think I'm judging them with their food choices.
Yep.
And it's like, I actually think the health industry is part to blame in that, because all we're fed across TikTok and Instagram is don't eat this. This is killing you. This is so bad for you. This is the reason for this. And it's
too much sugar, too many carbs, eat more protein.
And it's overwhelming. And then suddenly the health space becomes this like massive bombardment of like intense opinions. And it doesn't need to be that intense, doesn't need to be that serious. It can just be full of food joy.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the conversations that I have with women of all ages, but I especially feel like whenever I'm talking to women in their 20s, they talk about IBS and their gut health. You are a gut health expert. So let's kind of get into this. Why do women in their 20s seem to all have IBS? Every single one. I remember saying I had IBS all throughout my 20s.
Yeah. So IBS is what we call an umbrella term for a whole host of gut health symptoms. Yeah. And my biggest thing, if anyone listens to this and they want to take one thing away, it's not the food that's making your gut respond. It's how your gut is responding to the food. I'm going to say that one more time. Mm-hmm. It's not the food that is making your gut respond. It's how your gut is responding to the food.
Got it.
And we often say like your gut is your second brain. It's this whole incredible, diverse thinking kind of muscle that needs training, exactly like you train your other muscles to go to the gym. And it's also affected by pretty much every single thing we do in our life. And my favorite comparison here is, you know, when you're about to do a big event and you're a bit anxious and you're a bit nervous, you have the nervous poo. You need to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
And that is a direct physiological response to your emotions. So imagine what your chronic stress, your chronic lack of sleep, your chronic cortisol, your chronic running around, not eating properly, sitting down, prioritizing digestion, eating too quickly is doing to your gut every single day when you do that day in, day out. And it's no wonder that we're having this epidemic of gut health issues and so many people experiencing chronic bloating, food sensitivities, kind of cramping, pain, all of these things are all because of our lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And then in turn, we're unable to process and digest our food properly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're saying that we could probably eat most foods, but our guts just don't handle it well.
If you feel like you have a food sensitivity, it's very important to distinguish between food intolerances and food sensitivities. If you have a food intolerance or a kind of a food allergy, you know about it. When you eat that food, you are getting your rashes, you are on the bathroom, you're very, very uncomfortable. And that's kind of that kind of autoimmune response to that food. So if you are celiac, you cannot outtrain your body and start digesting gluten. So it's very important to recognize that. But it's this whole host of food sensitivity tests that people are doing when they send a piece of hair off, or they just do a stool test and they get 20 kind of foods that they shouldn't be eating. They're not accurate. And what we know is that if you have a food sensitivity, you can actually help retrain your body to be able to process it and digest it appropriately.
So wait, so let me get this straight. I actually did one of these food sensitivity tests, and I was surprised because they told me pork and spinach. Yeah. I was like sensitive to these things, which I thought was weird because I'm like, why? Why would I be sensitive to these things? But it was food like that. And so for a second there, I started to avoid it. And then I just started eating it again because I was like, well, I don't feel any different.
So was it a blood test?
It was a blood test. Yeah.
So those blood tests are based on something called IgG testing. IgE testing gives you a diagnosis for an allergy. So that is something that is clinically relevant. If you do get that result back, please do not eat that food.
Yeah.
IgG testing is what they base the food intolerances on. So intolerances, sensitivities.
Okay.
These are not clinically relevant. So if you get a list of 20 foods back and it's like, oh, it's a blood test, it must be legitimate. Unfortunately, we don't see any sort of kind of correlation or trend between, okay, if you get rid of all of these foods, your gut health symptoms are going to improve, because that's a gold standard test. It's not up there when it comes to kind of critical value. It is just worth noting that most of the time, I always say your gut is like a muscle you train in the gym. So you don't go up to the squat bar and instantly try and squat 100 kgs.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, when they go on their health journeys or they look at, okay, how to improve gut health, it's eat 30 different types of plants a week, get your 30 grams of fiber in a day, lots of fermented foods, so your kimchis and your sauerkrauts. And people will go like, right, I'm in. They walk up to that squat bar, they put 100 kg on both sides and they try and squat and they tear a muscle.
Right.
If you try and do everything that you know helps improve gut health all at once, and you're wondering why you're crippled over, you're bloating and your gut is very unhappy, it's exactly the same.
It makes sense.
So I always say, if you're looking to improve your gut health symptoms, strip it back, foundational approach. So really look at kind of supporting the overall gut function and structure. So exactly like the skin, the gut has its own barrier. And it's another one of my favorite comparisons. Like, you know how important skin barrier is for protection, reducing inflammation, making sure that it's not kind of getting in contact with any sort of pollution, environmental aggressors. Your gut is the same, and your gut barrier has this lovely kind of like thick mucosal layer. All of your gut bacteria live there. You've got these lovely gut cells which are held together with something called tight junctions. When we aren't looking after our gut barrier properly, because so much of our immune system is actually housed around our gut, 70%, when we have a weakening of that gut barrier, shredding of the mucus, loosening of these tight junctions between the cells, we get this chronic overstimulation of the immune system. And that will drive systemic inflammation within the body.
And inflammation is what causes all our problems, right? Inflammation
is definitely a driving force. I think inflammation scares a lot of us, but even eating is a normal inflammatory response. Every single time we eat, we actually cause a little bit of inflammation. It's this chronic inflammation that's the issue.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, I'm just not an all or nothing person. So I would never say I will never have sugar again. I will never have like whatever people demonize, but I'm not going to have loads of it every single day, if that makes sense. And it's the same when it comes to that kind of inflammation within the gut. So focus on strong, healthy, resilient gut barrier. And then build up your diversity, your fiber intake, your fermented food intake. Start looking after the types of live species of bacteria and all sorts that live within your gut. And that's what leads the road to good gut health. So slow and stepwise is key.
So what would be that first thing that whenever you're talking to somebody, what would be your first step for them? What would you say, like, to simplify it for somebody?
Yeah. And is this someone who is experiencing gut issues or has a healthy gut?
Having some gut, or they think they have gut issues.
Okay. So I would say, again, strip it back. So maybe ease off a lot of the fiber, a lot of the fermented foods, not so many raw veggies, and try not to have kind of fruit after a complete meal, if that makes sense. So I would say, imagine your body or your stomach like a bucket. If you're putting apples on top of pasta, it's going to be a bit fermenty. So just think about meal timings. It's also worth thinking about types of supplements that you want to be using. So one of my favorite foundational gut supplements is something called L-glutamine. It's actually something that I put into the smoothie that we had for
If you guys don't know, I actually met Emily because we worked with her with my brand Naturium in the UK. We actually did a whole smoothie truck where we celebrated the launch of a product here. And so she put together this smoothie that had really amazing skincare ingredients in it, or ingredients that are good for your skin, not actual skincare ingredients.
But feeding the skin through the gut.
Yes, exactly.
So I snuck L-glutamine in there, of course. And L-glutamine is really important for that gut barrier function. So kind of going back to that. Then it's also worth thinking about certain types of probiotics that you can get on board. I do have my own probiotic brand. And it's one thing that is so shocking with the kind of unregulated supplement industry is the amount of nonsense that is out there. And I think it's important to remember that what's inside the cap is important, but it's also how what's inside the cap is getting delivered. So making sure that you're having efficacy with the types of probiotics that you're taking. Are you buying a supplement that's actually getting where it needs to go? And then starting to work out what works with your body. And the interesting thing about our gut is that our gut bacterial composition is as unique as our own fingerprints. So when I try and give kind of dietary advice or gut health advice, I really want people to make sure they understand that it's their own unique journey.
It's just like skincare.
Just like skincare. Like what will work for some is not going to work for everyone. So when you are thinking about the types of foods that work for you, maybe you are a sweet breakfast person and a nice bowl of oats is just what makes you feel so good. Or maybe you are something that's a little bit more kind of high fat, high protein focused in the morning. That's what makes you feel best. When it comes to nutritional advice, the biggest thing, and when it comes to gut health advice, is make sure you're getting in lots of lovely diversity in a way that suits you, in a way that you enjoy. Make sure you're having a whole food focus. So when you look at your plate, can you identify what it is? Has it had minimal processing as the priority? It doesn't mean that we have to avoid every single ultra processed food there is out there forever, for the rest of our lives in order to be healthy. And discover what makes you feel your best. It's your own unique journey. I want to try and reconfirm some confidence in people again when it comes to their own bodies, because sometimes I feel like we feel so lost in all the information out there. It can feel actually quite difficult in trusting yourself, trusting your gut, and what makes you feel best.
Right. So you think most people need to maybe just take a step back and think about what it is that's making them feel better versus thinking about what's making them feel bad. Exactly.
No one knows your body better than you do. I mean, obviously, us as nutritionists and doctors, we understand the science behind the body. But if you're feeling a certain something, you are feeling that and you are experiencing that, and you have to trust yourself. So gut health, strip it back, build on that foundational approach, look after your gut barrier function, look after the types of species that live in there, sleep well, manage your stress levels, think about how much your emotions affect your gut. Try not to drink too much. Alcohol can be very damaging for the gut, everything in moderation, and build your food in a stepwise manner. Go to the gym, train it up, add those weights bit by bit by bit. If you try and add kimchi to your diet and it's just not working for you, you do not have to have kimchi in order to improve your gut health. So I think that's the messaging that I'm really keen to get across.
Got it. So you brought up Prebiotics and your own supplement brand, which is a Synbiotic, right?
Yes.
Will you explain to everybody what the difference is between just a plain prebiotic versus an actual symbiotic?
So we have prebiotics and we have probiotics and we have symbiotics. So probiotics are the live bacterial strains. What we're starting to do is collect a lot more research about singular strains now. So we know that certain strains can help benefit infants. Certain strains are really important for female health and vaginal health, for example. Certain strains have been correlated with improvements in mental health, anxiety and depression. So it's a really interesting area. As I said before, the issue with probiotics and that whole world is it's a minefield. It's so unique. It's so hard to study with really solid scientific evidence. And it's also worth noting that when you stick a whole host of different bacterial strains together, you don't necessarily know that they'll work in the same way as they would as individual strains, which is where it's important to kind of do the clinical research, do the clinical trials. And that's something we're actually doing at the moment with Epitome. So I'm really excited for that all to come out. Then a prebiotic is the food for the live bacteria. So we get a lot of prebiotics obviously from our food, from our fiber types. It's also worth noting that antioxidants and what we call polyphenols, so these are things that make our fruits and vegetables colored, give them those bitter tastes. Our gut bacteria actually metabolizes those too. So it's not just fiber that feeds the gut. And We can also add extra things like FOS, which is what can trigger a lot of people with IBS. I don't know if you've ever heard of the FODMAP diet. FODMAPs are basically these groups of compounds within our food that are fermented by the gut. And some people have more sensitivity to them than others. So high fermentability foods can actually trigger people's IBS symptoms, which is why sometimes we do this low FODMAP approach. But they are essentially prebiotics. So fuel for the fire. So say.
To take the probiotics and get the most benefit, you need a prebiotic to feed it.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, it just gives them a little extra kind of oomph and a little boost. And when we combine the two in a product, we call that a synbiotic. So if you're ever buying a synbiotic, it's just because the product or the supplement has a combination of both the pre and the pro.
Got it. Okay, so this is a question. I think I'd sent this to you, but I find that this happens to me and also to my friends whenever we start taking like a new, supplement like this. It's like a symbiotic and it's for our gut health and everything. We immediately feel like our bowel movements are different, not in a good way sometimes too. Like you feel more off. And so then it causes a lot of us to just stop taking it because we're like, when are we going to regulate? Because you're expecting to regulate and then you get the opposite. What is going on?
So that's a sign that things are working.
Okay.
Because it's actually making a change that's making a difference. Sometimes we have to ride the wave of gut health to achieve the end goal. And it's one of the reasons why I always prefer to do that start slow and build approach, because if you just build, go straight to the end point, that's where you'll get the worst bloating, the worst cramps, the worst kind of change in bowel movements. If you do take a supplement, and obviously it's 4 weeks later after consistently taking the kind of correct dose as advised by the company, and you're still experiencing negative side effects, maybe it's not the one for you. Maybe you do actually have just a certain sensitivity and it's not something that your gut is able to kind of balance or get used to. But it's literally like a wave. Like if you drop something in water, it's going to be a little bit turbulent for a while, but it will settle. So give it time. Normally, most kind of gut health companies advise about a month of usage in order for your gut to settle. So ride the wave and it should calm down. If it doesn't, it's not the right one for you.
And that's good advice. And what's funny is I tell people this all the time when it comes to skincare. You have to give a product at least 4 to 6 weeks to see a difference in your skin. So that makes complete sense. Going back to the 20-somethings that are saying that they have IBS, you were saying how all of the things that are happening in our lives, that chronic stress and everything is affecting our gut health, which I think is really interesting to a lot of people. So if you are a person who thinks you're like self-diagnosing, right? You're like, I have IBS.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that they should probably take a step back and look at? Like, are they partying a lot and going out all the time? The sleep thing? What are these things that they should be just thinking about besides their food?
Yeah. So number one for me is stress and stress management. If you are stressed and on the go, I'm going to say 99% of my gut health clients had stress-related issues that were causing their gut symptoms, honestly. And I think stress and our emotions right now is another epidemic that we're going through. 100%. I think COVID actually was a time that enabled people to step back and think about themselves and slow down. And now we're back on the hamster wheel again. And I think everything has that intensity of pace. So it's no wonder we're seeing that amount of side effects. Number two is, how are you eating your food? And not a lot of people think about this, but your gut bacteria actually follows the same circadian rhythm-like pattern as your sleep hormones. So if you have regular eating windows, your gut bacteria, or certain strains of your gut bacteria, will start to flourish before a meal. So if you make sure that you have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner at regular intervals, we actually see this slight flourish.
So be consistent with how you're eating.
Be consistent with how you're eating. It's going to improve your digestion. It's going to reduce the side effects that you may be experiencing. And slow down. Slow down. We all eat too fast. We all eat on a rush or on the go. And it's one of the things I always try and prioritize. Whenever I eat my lunch and I want to make sure that I'm digesting it properly, I will try and sit. I have a book now as well, so I won't be on my phone. I'll read my book and I'll eat my lunch mindfully, and I'll give myself at least 15 minutes just to enable my digestive system to get to work. And then about half an hour after, if you want to go on a nice little post-lunch walk, perfect time to do so. That's also just going to help ease digestion, reduce any sort of like fatigue, afternoon slumps and bits and bobs. And then the last one would be sleep. Sleep is so important. And good sleep hygiene, getting 7 to 8 hours a night is fundamental. And not a lot of people know that a bad night's sleep can actually disrupt your hunger hormones the next day. So if you have a bad night's sleep, it will impact a hormone called ghrelin, which is the hormone that kind of drives hunger. And it will also alter your blood glucose responses the next day. So you will have kind of impaired blood glucose management and also higher cravings for carbs and sweeter, saltier, snacky, ultra-processed foods just by having a bad night's sleep.
What about other supplements? Are there other ones that you suggest people take just in general?
Yeah. So if we're getting into kind of like cold and flu season, vitamin C with zinc can actually shorten the duration of cold and cold symptoms. So my favorite, I'm going to go back to talking about supplement forms as well, because it's something that I'm so passionate about, because if you're investing money on a supplement, you want to make sure that it's actually working or getting where it needs to go.
And you're not just peeing it out.
Not just peeing it out. Liposomal is the way forward. This is basically where we put whatever we're taking into a little liposphere, which is like a little circle, and the outer coating is much more kind of compatible with our bodies and our membranes, which means we get much higher absorption, like up to 80-90% versus 17 to 20. Really important for things like vitamin C. If you're someone who suffers from anemia, taking liposomal iron is phenomenal. So I know so many women who suffer from very heavy periods, or they're constantly battling with fatigue and an iron deficiency driven fatigue. If you take a liposomal iron supplement, I guarantee it will change your life.
I mean, I've been on an iron supplement for years, but never a liposomal one. And again, it makes sense because this is what we do with our skincare brand. You know, like we're always, our vitamin C is also liposomal in its own way. Yeah, we conjugate it with golden glutathione.
Amazing.
To make it have better absorption and penetration to the skin.
I mean, and that's exactly what I would recommend. Yeah. For you to take orally as well.
Yeah.
But it's why it's so important. Like the supplement industry, people are just like pressing out these press pills and they're not doing what you think they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
When I talk about supplements, again, I think everyone has their own unique supplement journey. I like people to explore the supplements that make them feel good. And I genuinely know people who have had incredibly bad PMS symptoms and they've chosen a greens powder and they've started this greens powder every single morning and it's made them go away. And it's one of these issues when it comes to, if there's not gold standard evidence behind it, a lot of people are very quick to judge. But I think it's important to recognize that if anecdotally you take something and it works for you or it makes you feel good, that does not mean that it's not working. Placebo is a wonderful thing and it's an actual phenomenon. So if you take something and you feel like it's going to make you achieve X and you do achieve X, who knows if it's a supplement or who knows if it's the placebo driving response. But what's important to remember is like it still worked. I talk a lot about micro habits in nutrition and we can focus on these big pictures and these big sparkly end goals and what we want our life to look like. But actually waking up and starting your day with a greens juice could be the tiny micro habit that influences so many other micro decisions that you make in your day, which then feed into this massive macro decision of the health of your life. So don't shun the green juice and laugh being like, oh, what's it for? It's for more than just nutrients and it's for more than just the green. It's for the micro habit. So I think a lot of supplements can actually really feed into that micro habit pattern. I'm trying to think of any other really kind of gold standard one. I packed my little supplement travel case because I'm away in Italy next week. And what do I have in there? So my morning is really simple. I always take 5 grams of L-glutamine. I take my Synbiotic Epitome. And when I travel, I like to look after my immune system. So I'll take my liposomal vitamin C. And zinc. Evening, I actually have a liposomal glutathione. I take my magnesium citrate when traveling because girls who glow are regular girls as well. If you want good skin, look after your gut. And my 5-HTP.
Okay.
And then I have also my little electrolyte sachets that I'll have as well. And that's my kind of foundational travel routine. I also take this incredible antioxidant, which I can't pronounce, Axexitin. Axexitin.
We'll write it in the description.
We'll write it in the description. It's what they use to kind of make salmon pink. So it's this incredible pigment that actually sits within your skin. It's such an amazing antioxidant. And it's one of the most kind of exciting things for me for like longevity and longevity research that's gone on behind it. And I also take a liposomal form of that. And yeah, I think that's my core.
You know, I love that you said the micro habits are really important, especially for somebody to not get overwhelmed, right, by trying to be healthier. For the longest time, I went years like this. I would not have breakfast.
Yeah.
I would only have 2 cups of coffee, and that would get my day started. And I started working out with a personal trainer, and she was like, you have to eat breakfast. You have to stop with just like getting on with fumes of your caffeine, you know? So I had the hardest time trying to do this, having breakfast. I don't know why, because I think I've got so much happening. I've got kids, you know, mornings feel hectic. And so I finally figured out my routine. It took me months to figure out the perfect routine. I started getting suggested by my trainer and also by a couple of nutritionists I know. They start saying for my age, especially, to start taking creatine, which for me was so surprising because I associated it with like meatheads in the gym, you know, like the workout bros, you know? And I start taking a little bit of, it's like 2.5 grams. That's all I really take. I was trying to get to 5 grams and it was like making me feel uncomfortable, whatever. So I brought it back down to 2.5. And now I just have like a really quick, it's not even a smoothie. It's like a protein shake that's like a shaker bottle protein shake. It's like my protein, some collagen, my creatine, and like some almond milk. And I start my day like that. And then I'll drink my coffee. And it has changed my life for sure. Like I have so much more energy, even with my lack of sleep.
There's so much fantastic research behind creatine now. It's definitely a supplement that I think I can confidently endorse. I think it's brilliant for kind of strength and supporting overall training and muscle. I think collagen's a really interesting one. And I'm happy that you mentioned it actually, because I didn't mention it before, but that is also something that I take. The research debate of collagen went on for so long. I think it's really important to remember that just because collagen is a protein doesn't necessarily mean it's a superior protein to like a whey protein or a more complete protein powder. But what we do see a lot more evidence behind now is skin hydration, elasticity, hair and nails. Like if you take a collagen supplement, I guarantee your nails will just, it's phenomenal. So it is actually another one that I do recommend people dabble in. And as you said, like when you're busy, when you're on the go, I think people who are anti-supplements always say, yeah, but you can just get everything you need from a well-balanced diet. Let's be honest. How many people have the time and the organization and those non-chaotic lives to make sure that every single thing they could possibly need, they're just getting from their diet alone?
I mean, there's no way. Okay, so with my age also, I've never had to think about protein so much in my life. I feel like it's all I think about is how much getting more and more protein into my diet. And what I find is because I've focused sometimes so much on getting the protein in, then the rest of my diet suffers because I'm not getting all the greens in and everything because I'm so full from just trying to eat a steak. you know?
Yeah, that is such a good point. And it's one of I wouldn't say issues, but I think it's one thing that's really important to talk about. As we get older, we need more protein. Fact. It is so important. But what I don't want people to do is then have displacement of foods that are so good for you in order to just get your protein in. Because everything that I spoke about gut health before, the things that nourish it, the fiber, the antioxidants, the whole foods, the plants, they are often lacking when it comes to protein sources. So I always actually encourage protein diversity. So when you're thinking about putting together your meals, we can get protein from plants. Of course, it's not as bioavailable. It doesn't have as high what we call protein quality compared to animal-based sources. But if you I always create these kind of like globals or these like massive big toss salads where I'll put in quinoa is a fantastic one. Any sort of grain, has a really good source of protein in. Legumes, so adding in your chickpeas there. I'll often make yogurt-based salad dressings. So I'll use like really good quality Greek yogurt, again, more protein. A crumble of feta, again, more protein. Then I'll add my prawns or shrimp for American listeners, or chicken or anything like that. And then suddenly I've got this massive salad bowl that has like 5 or 6 different types of plants and veggies in, but then also 5 or 6 different protein sources. So I'm having this beautiful massive bowl and I'm hitting 50, 60 grams and I'm not just eating chicken, rice and broccoli.
I'm going to have to try this. I mean, I've been looking at I have a few of your recipes now saved in my folder on Instagram because I'm like, I'm going to make this. It's just like, I got to sit down and actually try to make it.
They are good.
Yeah, they look really good too. Last question, water. How important is staying hydrated?
I mean, the hydration is like the building blocks of your life.
Yeah.
I mean, water is something that is so important for skin health. When we want lovely, plump, hydrated skin throughout all of the levels, in order for your skin to function optimally and appropriately, really, so many people misjudge hunger and also fatigue when they are just a little bit dehydrated.
How about putting in like those electrolyte packets and everything? Does that help you stay hydrated?
So electrolyte sachets can definitely help with hydration. It's not something that people need to be having every single day. I think that's what the misconception with electrolytes are. They're mostly reserved for kind of athletes or people who are doing like really strenuous exercise. But it's another one that if you are feeling a little bit like deflated and that super dehydrated feeling, having a little electrolyte sachet could actually go a long way to just helping top you up and re-energizing you. And you can feel the difference. Some people take them like 2 or 3 times a day, not realizing how much sodium's in them. So there's a lot of salt in electrolyte sachets. So you do not want to be having 3 of the servings. And if you check the back of pack, it always says, please limit to 1 a day. Yeah, it's not something that, okay, I'm not going to be hydrating if I don't have electrolytes in my water. But it's something that if you are feeling a little bit low, you can definitely feel the improvement if you incorporate them once in a while.
A nutritionist once told me that I didn't even need to buy the packet. She said just like sprinkle a little salt into your water or even some lemon juice. What do you think about that? My
only thing is, what's a pinch? And I just want to make sure that people are having the right ratios. With electrolytes, it's really important. It's the balance of the key minerals in there. The little pinch of salt in water is definitely a nice way to add that extra little bit of boost. And if it makes you feel good, then fantastic.
Back to the placebo effect, right? I did lemon in my water for years thinking that I was so much more hydrated.
Yeah. And then my dentist told me off and was like, there's corroding your teeth.
Like, oh, right. The side effect of that though. I forgot. I wanted to ask your opinion on smoothies.
Yeah.
To wrap up the conversation. Smoothies, yes or no for people? And what's the best way to think about your smoothie when you're making one?
Yes. Think of it as like a pureed salad. And what I mean by that is, what would you put into a nice balanced salad bowl? So making sure that you're getting in your protein, making sure you're getting in your fiber, making sure that you're kind of keeping the carbs and the sugar balanced, and just think of it as a complete meal. It can be something that is a brilliant snack and a brilliant pick-me-up, and it also can be something that's brilliant to take on the go. If you do need something that's like quick breakfast, transportable, so many of the clients that I worked with, they were like, I don't have time for breakfast in the morning. I've got 3 kids who I can just about feed. I can't feed myself. I'm like, this is what we need to just stick it into a blender. So one of my favorite morning smoothies would be like a scoop of protein powder. I actually like to put a bit of matcha, so a teaspoon of matcha in. I'll do a handful of spinach, frozen blueberries, maybe a bit of beetroot, tiny little pinch of salt, a little bit of vanilla extract, and a bit of Greek yogurt in there as well. And then if I wanted to sweeten that a little bit more, I'd either put a bit of honey or a bit of maple, a bit of sweet cinnamon, blend it up, ready to go.
So no base like an almond milk or an oat milk?
Oh, yeah. So I'm obsessed with cashew milk. Have you ever had it?
I have in coffee, at like a really fancy like cafe.
It's so delicious. We have a great brand in the UK called Plenish, and it's like a 3-ingredient plant-based milk. They taste amazing. They're super delish. And they're also quite light. So they're really good like base just to kind of build everything off. I do have dairy. Dairy is something that I have in my diet. I think in the UK we're very lucky. We have really great high quality dairy. It's a great source of calcium, crucial for female health, lots of lovely B vitamins. But sometimes it's just worth noting that types of dairy can actually bind with the antioxidants in the things like the matcha. And I don't really drink like 250 mils of milk. That's just my preference. I'd rather have it in like a yogurt form where I'm getting in kind of some live cultures and a bit more protein. But again, it's just my preference. If you wanted to use milk in that smoothie, you definitely could.
Oh, that's good to know. All right. Emily, this has been so fun to talk to you. I've learned so much. Will you tell everyone where they can find you on social media?
So you can find me at the Nutritionist on both Instagram and TikTok.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of My Life Online. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to follow, rate, and review, and also share it with a friend so we can continue making great episodes for you. You can also find me on social media. I'm at Susan Yara, and if you enjoy beauty, especially skincare, make sure to check out my YouTube channel, Mixed Makeup. I'll talk to you soon.